like to introduce Erin Barnes, who is the Picture the Poet Schools Manager. So Erin is going to talk to us about how we develop those effective schools for school engagement, and also, I think, perhaps share some of the tips that really led to the kind of really effective engagement of, well, up to 35 schools for every single region. So we had thousands of young people through the schools programme engaged in Picture the Poet. So Erin, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, and good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be sharing a little bit of a whistle-stop of the schools programme for Picture the Poet. Would love to can share with you a kind of quick 10-point plan of absolute bulletproof engagement that will drive schools in their thousands. Not possible, but I can definitely share with you some effective hooks that we used and developed over the 2 years. And this is it's a whistle-stop that echoes everything that Jonathan said at the beginning. We were really excited about working in this space because what the overview is here, we're talking about pupil enjoyment, teacher confidence. Really, it's about hearts and minds. And we felt completely excited about being in this cultural space, working with National Portrait Gallery and Apples and Snakes, to be able to be a bit of a glue in translating school needs and knowing what was really, really exciting about using an exhibition as brilliant catalyst material for writing. What we weren't about doing was about studying those poets. Everything that the programme was about was increasing pupil excitement, enjoyment and teacher confidence in writing their own work and discovering themselves as brilliant creative writers, sometimes and often for the first time. And clearly linked to that, if it works, it's going to clearly have an effect on attainment. And that was, again, a key bit of communication early in talking to schools, that this would have an impact. It would drive literacy outcomes that were core requirements for their school needs. So that was a really exciting hook and developed the whole way through the 3 years. We also knew it had to be completely hands-on and entirely practical. So we surrounded ourselves with the expertise and the practitioners to make that happen, 3 of which, Ian, you've heard from already, Francesca will hear from shortly, and Paul the same. I have to say, I'm leaving all the whizzy slides to Paul. He's got photographs and everything. You won't get that in this. And we know that the crucial ingredients for us in creating that win-win, what was going to really make a difference in head teachers picking this up and seeing this would make a real difference to their autumn, their spring, their summer term requirements. We knew that we had to make that explicit. This wasn't a nice to have. We know that the challenging culture for schools is increasingly challenged, and that we have to be really clear about making those outcomes for schools more and more explicit. This is not a nice to have. School trips are difficult at the best of times. They're getting harder. So us being able to communicate to the fact that teachers would find absolute benefit and see explicit outcomes in their literacy and their writing, enjoyment but also attainment, was really crucial for this programme. We were lucky with the funding to be able to offer it as free access, and we also know that nothing for schools comes for free. Even when you say free, we know that is heavy on pupil transport and heavy on staff cover. Liz mentioned earlier, it was really important to us that we had resources that were at the ready for as soon as we could be able to launch the programme. There would be practical, downloadable resources, and Francesca wrote some absolutely brilliant activities, lesson plans, workshops, project starters that schools and teachers from generalists to supply to specialists could take away straight away. And we wanted to create an on-site opportunity so that when those pupils came to the gallery, you'd have heard from Ian already, they were able to enjoy in really meaningful activity. So a bit of a pathway for engagement. It was a layered programme. We started every region with a teacher CPD professional development day that was a full day. It was free. It was practitioner-led. Crucial to that was the fact that it was entirely hands-on and immersive. And those teachers came from NQT status right the way through to head teachers. We know, and evidence is really being gathered to show that teachers just have such limited access to poetry. If you do a PGC course at the moment, you just get 3 hours in that year. So there's a radical need for this kind of activity to be able to support what teachers have in their training. We know that what we were doing was, and evidence again shows, it was radically different to some of the inset days that were being delivered across the school year. And crucial to that was that it wasn't a twilight or a Saturday, it was central to the school week. It was a day that was committed to by the head teacher or school that made sure that they had valued that in their school week, that teachers are doing this as part of their core delivery. We talked about learning resources, and again, we've got downloadables. You can see them on the website if you want to use those. But also the pupil opportunity when they came to the gallery, that layered programme. So from Teacher Cpd to go away and deliver brilliant stuff back in the classroom, feel equipped to do some fantastic stuff straight away, that then would lead to pupils coming into the gallery, and they could either then book for, and they bit our hands off for this, to be able to spend a bit of time with Ian, a workshop with him where they sang, they did cartwheels, they did incredible things in that space, immersed in a gallery setting, bringing life to all the poets in the exhibition and really making meaning for their own writing as well, and their own stories. In-gallery pupil workshops that were led by Paul Jenkins, and you'll hear from him in a bit. Again, all about eliciting and scaffolded approaches to eliciting their own creative response and their own creative writing. And if none of that was a possibility for the school, they could come in and do their own self-directed options as well, with poetry books that we provided and activity sheets as well. I think the thing we learnt from this is that no matter how much you set up a pathway, months and terms in advance, it needs to be flexible, to be non-linear as well. We know that teachers in schools want to be able to sometimes dip in and out of those activities too. So maintaining momentum was crucial in all of those areas, but having that flexibility to respond to school needs was also really important. Did it work? We're really cautious of sharing stats, and they can tell any kind of story, but there are some crucial ones here that we just wanted to share with you. We're halfway through the evaluation on this programme at the moment, and from a sample at the moment of 750 responses, some of the stats that are coming through are really interesting. We knew as we were developing that the teacher response was 100% to the fact that it exceeded their expectations in having time to spend in their own reflecting, their own creative practice, and time spent with a performance poet. Many of them had never seen performance poetry before, and it blew their minds in terms of having that live performance, but then also being able to do it themselves and put themselves in the driving seat. And Francesca will talk a little bit more about that, what that looked like, because one of the key things we were trying to support teachers was that they could write poetry for the first time, but also then write it with their pupils and have that as a level playing field to be able to, and that's terrifying for teachers, we know that, to put themselves in on a level playing field with those pupils and to share poetry in all its messy glory. But crucial to this, and interesting for this space today, is that 47% had never visited that particular venue before. And in Lincoln, that rose to 63%. And of all the galleries that we were working with, those were central, landmark, iconic buildings. So in terms of audience development, really interesting to note. And again, we were hoping this would be the case, but an overwhelming majority of pupils enjoyed poetry more as a result of engaging with it, writing it for the first time, and having time with performance and spoken word poets as well. But we're learning all the time. This is a mashup of stuff that we've learnt here. I want to pick out one of the crucial things for us was about working in partnership. This programme wouldn't have been possible. We have a network of thousands of schools, but we also know that working in partnership with the regions, there are agencies who work on the ground daily and have head teacher communications that are really rich. So working in Sheffield, working with the school's library service was brilliant in knowing that we could tap in and land this activity with schools as part of the school's library network because they had those daily conversations. And in Lincoln, the same to be said with Paradigm Arts and C1 Media, talking with them early about how we might engage teachers. They were doing that communication as part of their role on the ground already. We had 52 teachers, 52 schools come from that agency, that organisation, and we couldn't meet demand. Brilliant dilemma to have. We had 2 days for CPD because of that, the strength of that partnership and their involvement. We also knew that it's so tricky for schools, as we all are aware, to be able to sign off timetable, to be able to come out knowing that has a cost, even when it's free, and that they have to justify every single ounce of that time then back in the curriculum. They are so squeezed. It takes a brave teacher more than ever to be able to say this is of absolute cultural value in that classroom. So the importance of a day-long offer, not a 90-minute experience or a 60-minute workshop, but something that would collapse the whole timetable for the day and add value to that experience. So we worked with the libraries in each of those regions, and the libraries were super in coming up with complementary workshops, so that a visit to the gallery and an exhibition workshop with Paul or with Ian would be complemented by a library workshop about how you'd navigate poetry in a library. And often for those, it was about being first-time borrowers, or being able to know that poetry was not in the fiction section. Really simple but really effective hooks for teachers. And then thirdly, knowing that the richness of that particular gallery or museum was perhaps the first time that school had been engaged, knowing that they could have self-directed options for the rest of the day. There was lunch, there was a lunch space, there were toilet breaks, all those things that made it a really easy wraparound offer. I want to say something about the quality of invitation. We know that schools are bombarded with opportunity and they have less and less time to take it up. So the quality of invitation, knowing that this would be mapped straight into the curriculum, it would hit core needs, it would go to the head teacher who would then be able to point us in the right direction of which teacher would take this up and how that cohort, which key stage it would work best with, which year group leader and so on. And of course the luxury of timing, that we had a little bit on this project, so we were fortunate, at least a term's notice. And we know, if possible, at least a year's notice, that the luxury is not always there. But for a September bit of marketing to go out for what's happening in spring and summer means everything to that classroom and that school planning. And the importance then, and finally, on the significance of Teacher Cpd, we feel there's a real space for this. And the evidence coming back is that teachers, this was radically different to what teachers were getting. They are squeezed in terms of what they're able to deliver and have time and permission to have for their own reflective practice. And this was a really rich area that if we can inspire teachers and we can equip them with the confidence, then of course they go on to be able to do that with their pupils. So that was a really clear win-win for us. I've just had my no minutes, I'm up. But really looking forward to speaking to you the rest of the day and sharing expertise and experience in the room. Thank you very much.